Aston Martin's bad start to the season might be the only bad news for the team so far, as rumours circle around the paddock that soon enough a major shift might happen, which has the potential to make gigantic changes in the F1 world. Not only that, but the Silverstone-based team might bring some familiar faces that will definitely put them in the title race for the foreseeable future. How would this shape the sport, and are we seeing the start of something similar in Formula 1, which we've seen in other sports? So this all started a year ago when Aston Martin formed a partnership with the state producer of oil and gas for Saudi Arabia, Aramco, which is the second largest company in the world by revenue. The deal was primarily discussed for a complete takeover, but in the end a partnership was formed and Aramco became Aston Martin's title sponsor, as Saudi Arabia's public investment fund increased its stake in the British luxury car maker to 20.5%. In November, Lawrence Stroll made a significant move by selling a portion of the Aston Martin Formula 1 team to the US-based private equity firm Arctos Partners, marking the team's first venture into such an arrangement, and rumours began to circulate that this action might indicate a gradual disengagement from Stroll's part in managing the team. Furthermore, Aramco has demonstrated steadfast commitment as a global partner in Formula 1 since 2020. Amid the pandemic, there were discussions suggesting the possibility of Aramco assuming control of F1 from Liberty Media. However, this scenario of course didn't materialise, and instead the American company and the teams within F1 saw significant gains, with the value of the sport tripling since then. Nonetheless, Aramco's role of Aston Martin's primary sponsor showcased a more direct and enduring commitment, and this partnership extends to areas such as media presence and technological advancements, which are crucial as the sport prepares for the mandatory use of 100% sustainable fuels by 2026. In Jeddah, however, it became apparent that Saudi Arabia's interest in a substantial commitment to Formula 1 is burgeoning, and with the state directly overseeing this initiative and Aramco being intrinsically linked to a fund established for promoting the country's global stature through sizable acquisitions like the Aston Martin one they are trying to make. We've seen a situation like this in Formula 1 when last December the Mumtalakat, Bahrain's investment fund, has taken full ownership of McLaren Group, part of which is of course the McLaren F1 team. It might very well be that the Saudis are looking at this as some sort of a competition with the Bahrain royal family and might push harder to acquire Aston Martin in the near future. Should a move like that happen, then it would shake the sport to its core, because as we know, with the recent drama going on with Red Bull, if Verstappen were to leave, Aston Martin is not a team to completely rule out of the equation. We talked about Mercedes a lot on the channel, and we know about how they're failing super hard in this ground effect era, and the upcoming departure of Hamilton of course doesn't paint the most reassuring picture for the team moving forward. Aston Martin, however, holds several advantages. They've demonstrated competitiveness this season, particularly in qualifying, where they have the third fastest average pace, and although this success hasn't fully translated into race performance, the team's plans to introduce further upgrades as the season progresses, and despite Ferrari's resurgence this year, Aston Martin remains within striking distance, particularly in qualifying, where they have outperformed the Silver Arrows. Another significant factor driving Aston Martin's optimism is their partnership with Honda starting in 2026. With substantial investments in their infrastructure and personnel, Aston Martin anticipates continued growth, especially with the Honda Works partnership, and becoming the sole team powered by Honda in 2026 could prove instrumental given Honda's recent success with Red Bull and how Max Verstappen is familiar with how those engines work. Red Bull, on the other hand, will collaborate with Ford starting in 2026, and while this partnership might not evoke the same level of confidence as offerings from Mercedes, Ferrari or Honda, it does represent a significant shift. With a works deal in place, Aston Martin will no longer grapple with concerns about compatibility issues with Mercedes components such as rear suspensions or gearbox. However, the situation becomes significantly more compelling if the financial backing is there. Recent discussions, particularly following the Jeddah Grand Prix, have revolved around Lawrence Stroll's decision to sell a minority stake in the team, which we mentioned earlier. This move suggests that Stroll may be contemplating selling the team outright, a decision that might make sense considering his successful efforts in building up the team's reputation over the years. And while Stroll undoubtedly desires a world championship title for his team and his son, because if you watch the last season of Drive to Survive, he stated that he's primarily a father and only then an F1 team owner. The reality is that achieving this feat may require more financial resources. With significant funding potential on the horizon, such as from Aramco, the allure of additional investment would become harder to resist. The interesting thing now becomes that if Verstappen and Newey leave Red Bull, could Aston Martin become a financially attractive possibility? Because if Aramco acquires the Silverstone outfit, then it is more than certain the Saudis will offer a blank cheque to the Dutch driver and the British aerodynamicist, and it might very well happen that we see them working just down the road, basically from Milton Keynes, and in a completely different team. Aramco declined to comment on this when asked by a certain media outlet, but it certainly would be interesting to see how Newey and Verstappen would fare in a team like that. This would represent a significant shift from their position just a few months ago. However, it's worth noting that the budget cap imposed on teams doesn't include spendings on hirings such as senior figures as well as drivers, and while it limits the overall spending of the team, this doesn't apply to top executives and drivers, allowing them to potentially earn hundreds of millions, while other employees receive comparatively modest salaries, often in the range of tens of thousands to low hundreds of thousands. Every scenario is possible, so Aston Martin must not be overlooked as a potential destination for Verstappen and Newey, but it will all depend on who will survive Red Bull's civil war. The 2026 F1 season promises to be more attractive for everyone thanks to the massive regulation changes, and with Honda partnering with Aston Martin, as we mentioned, from the perspective of Max Verstappen, this can only be positive. If Aramco completes a takeover, Aston Martin and Honda should be considered top contenders to seize every opportunity ahead of 2026. We've seen in other sports like football where the Saudis have the power to completely change the sport for good or bad, depending on how you look at it, and it definitely has the power to do this in Formula One as well. From a moral perspective, this will be bad for the sport, because in this world it would be yet another signal that anything can be bought for a lot of money, regardless of whether you should want it from an ethical point of view. Indeed, there is a substantial difference between engaging in human rights dialogue if you are in the country for a single race, or giving such a country influence from within the sport. Will Lawrence Stroll sell the team? It's yet to be seen, but with the oil money being so deep in almost every sport, it might as well be that we see an Aramco Formula One team in the near future, or even if it stays as Aston Martin as a brand and ownership with so much money. It definitely has the power to attract anyone and everyone, even the best and the brightest drivers and engineers. What sort of picture does it paint for the future of the sport? Well, you tell us in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and of course we'll see you very soon in the next video.